Discover the incredible transformation, how his maid's touching love revealed a hidden heart after hardship. Jake stepped into the fading light of yet another long day, the weight of the world on his shoulders. Work had exhausted him, but all fatigue melted away at the sound of Lily's laughter echoing through their small apartment. She was his sunshine, the reason he fought tirelessly through back-breaking jobs. Sure, their home was modest, but it thrived with love, and there was nothing more precious to Jake than that. Yet, living in a quaint suburban neighborhood with affluent families cast icy shadows on his familial bliss. The glares of neighbors in their pristine homes felt like barbs aimed at his blue-collar pride. His hands were calloused, thickened by labor, but he still didn't swallow his pride when he hired Maria, a kind-hearted immigrant maid with a gentle aura. He saw her suggestions as simplistic at best, but something about her smile warmed the weariness in him. As they worked together, she suggested starting a community project aimed at rejuvenating their local park. Her passion was infectious, and despite his initial hesitations, Jake found himself drawn into her vision. One evening, they stood before the park's crumbling playground, weeds encroaching on the swings that once saw many summers of joy. "We can bring this place back to life," Maria said softly, her eyes twinkling with optimism. Jake scoffed at first, but the image of Lily playing joyfully there stirred something in him. Slowly, they began to gather volunteers from the community, dusting off old tools and rekindling a sense of ownership. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Weeks flew by, and their small efforts bore fruit. The park began to sparkle with hope again, vibrant colors sprouting from freshly painted benches and blooming flowers. Jake watched as the children of the neighborhood, driven by curiosity, began playing in the park again, retreating into childhood joy. It was a shared sense of accomplishment that mended something inside Jake. But one hot afternoon, terror struck. A child slipped while climbing onto the makeshift zip line. The shrill scream pierced the laughter that had filled the space just moments before. Panic bubbled, eyes darting in confusion, but Maria's quick thinking stood out among the frenzy. She sprang into action, sprinting toward the scene, calm and focused. As she wrapped her arms around the frightened child, her soothing voice brought the chaos to a near halt. In that moment, Maria became a hero, capturing the hearts of the onlookers and igniting respect where previously there were only whispers of derision. A news crew arrived, capturing the scene of Maria embracing the child, her comforting words echoing long after. Suddenly, she transformed from a misunderstood maid into a beacon of strength within the community, a story of resilience that spread like wildfire. But as the applause faded into solemn whispers behind doors, shadows began to emerge. Rumors circulated, centered around Maria's immigration status, eroding the fragile bonds of acceptance she had formed. And Jake felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. He stood at a crossroads. Should he protect the woman who became family, or shield Lily from the storm of prejudice brewing in the neighbors' hushed conversations? As Jake looked toward the flickering lights of their apartment, anxiety twisted in his chest. Hope and fear clawed at him as the community, once united in joy, now hovered on the brink of division. How could he navigate this fragile web of love and judgment when every decision held the potential to unravel everything? Jake paced in the tiny kitchen as worries spiraled around him like loose papers caught in a gust of wind. The familiar sounds of toys clinking and Lily's sweet giggles from the living room were now overshadowed by a wave of uncertainty. Maria's laughter had faded, too, replaced by whispers of judgment from neighbors that once only offered polite nods. He glanced at Lily, her innocence a stark contrast to the swirling storm brewing outside. Could he really shield her from this? The turmoil twisted his stomach, and he felt the walls of their home closing in. Each day, It became harder to shut out the stares and the hushed voices that echoed down the street. Maria had brought that park back to life. But now, it felt at risk of becoming just another battlefield in the struggle for respect. Her worth had been magnified in that heroic moment, yet the neighbors' focus turned to her status. The joy she had sparked was being eclipsed by fear and prejudice. Finding an anchor in Lily's smile, he decided to confront the situation head-on. He wanted to defend Maria, but how? Would he become a target himself if he stood with her against the unyielding tide of judgment? The thought felt like a lead blanket weighing down his heart. Later that evening, Jake found himself sitting across the table from Maria, the air thick with unspoken tension. "What is going to happen, Maria?" he finally asked, searching her expression for some indication of how to navigate the storm. She sighed, her eyes brimming with understanding. "I don't know, Jake. I know what they're saying, but I'm just trying to create a better life. I never wanted to cause any trouble." Her voice trembled, and Jake's heart tightened. He had always known Maria was resilient and determined, but he hadn't anticipated the emotional toll this would take on her. "I don't want you to feel unsafe," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You're family to us. Lily adores you, and I wouldn't know how to help her grow without you." She smiled through tears, but a shadow of concern lingered. "And what about you? You have your family to protect, Jake. This could change everything for you." He leaned forward, firmer now. "If protecting you means risking everything, then so be it. We are stronger together than apart." He meant it. But as the words left his mouth, doubt slithered in like uninvited guests. After a long silence, Maria spoke up, her voice steady. "Maybe we need to stand together. But we should prepare for the backlash. It won't be easy." The night wore on, filled with plans and fears. They would confront the neighbors and advocate for acceptance. But deep within, Jake stilled a tremor of doubt. What if they failed to galvanize support? That very night, an unexpected interruption shifted his focus. A knock broke through the heaviness, echoing through their small apartment. Jake's heart raced as he exchanged glances with Maria, both bracing for whatever was on the other side. Who could it be? An ally? Or the voice of dissent ready to tear their fragile truce apart? With a deep breath, Jake steadied himself as uncertainty gnawed at him. A storm was approaching. Would they weather the tempest together, or would the rift grow even wider, threatening to consume everything they had built? The future loomed, tangled in both hope and fear. Opening the door could change everything. What awaited them would determine not just Maria's fate, but the very essence of their family. Jake's hand hovered over the doorknob, heart pounding like a drum in a silent parade. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown to something monumental. He glanced at Maria's worried expression, her brow furrowed, uncertainty etched onto her face. It was a shared moment, a culmination of their fears, hopes, and an unspoken understanding of what was at stake. Taking a breath that filled the clear air with a sense of purpose, he turned the knob and pulled the door open. The sight that greeted him caught him off guard. It was Mrs. Thompson, their elderly neighbor from 2 doors down. Her frail frame was wrapped in a cozy shawl, and her expression was softer than usual, almost tentative. "Jake, dear," she began, her voice shaking slightly as she held her hands together. "I wanted to speak with you. May I come in?" He stepped aside, his heart still racing as she entered. Maria appeared at his side, her expression shifting from confusion to cautious optimism. Mrs. Thompson settled into a chair at their small kitchen table, the warmth of their home enveloping her. I've heard the whispers," she said, her voice lower than a hush, as if she feared the walls were listening. "The rumors about Maria. And I thought perhaps I should say something." Jake exchanged a swift glance with Maria. There was a light of hope flickering in her eyes. He gestured for Mrs. Thompson to continue, fingers tingling with a mix of apprehension and encouragement. "Maria," she said softly, looking toward Maria with sincerity. "You've done so much for our community. The park, the activities, they've brought us joy, given us a reason to come together. Maria's lips parted slightly, surprise evident. Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. I just wanted to bring a little happiness. I know that, dear. But it's hard for people to see past their fears. The older woman's gaze turned serious, her hands wringing together. We're living in strange times, and I hate to admit that some of my neighbors are not as open-minded as I would like them to be. The feeling in Jake's chest swelled. He nodded slowly, as he processed her words. What can we do to change that? He asked, his voice steady. We can't let those voices drown out the good things. We have to stand up. Mrs. Thompson leaned in, her voice thick with an urgency that commanded the room. You're right, Jake. But it can't just be the three of us. The whole community needs to see the truth. We have to create a meeting, bring everyone together, spread understanding. The idea ignited a glimmer of determination in Maria's eyes. We can invite everyone and share our stories, talk about acceptance. But that will take courage, Jake interjected, a sense of dread creeping back. The thought of potentially facing the entire neighborhood sent shivers down his spine. What if they refuse to listen? Then we keep talking, Mrs. Thompson replied, resolute. One person at a time. You have to believe in the good, show them what you stand for. A silence settled over them, heavy yet mixed with the scent of possibility. Jake looked at Maria and saw someone ready to fight not just for herself, but for all of them. So it's decided then, Maria murmured, an ember of conviction glowing in her heart. We will meet with the neighbors. We'll show them they have nothing to fear. But even as she spoke, a sinking knot twisted in Jake's stomach. The ideal of unity tugged against the reality of division. Questions flooded his mind. Would they truly listen? Could they change their hearts? Just as hope was starting to bloom, another knock interrupted their thoughts. It was sharper, more demanding than before. The air thickened with uncertainty. Jake caught Maria's eye, and they both felt the intensity of the moment as they prepared to face whatever lay ahead. Who was it this time? Would it be another ally, or perhaps the very voice of opposition they dreaded? The door stood as a threshold between potential change and deeper conflict. Clenching his fists, Jake took a shaky breath. The future of their fight was about to unfold, and he could only hope they had the strength to meet it head-on. Jake opened the door, the face that greeted him causing his heart to leap into his throat. It wasn't he just a neighbor, it was Tom, a known leader within their community but hardly an ally. His face carried a mixture of annoyance and something darker, as if he had come ready to confront them. Jake, Tom's voice rang with authority. I need to talk to you. Now. Maria stepped closer, her protective instincts kicking in. Tom, is this really the best time? She asked, trying to gauge his mood. We're in the middle of something important. Ignoring her, Tom pushed into their home, his posture rigid. I don't like what I've been hearing. The rumors about you, Maria, the things you're planning. His eyes flicked between Jake and Maria, calculating their reactions. What we're planning is about community, Jake said, raising his voice slightly. It's about understanding. We need to come together. You know that, right? Tom pulled his lips into a thin line. Understanding? That's a nice way to put it. But it's not how the rest of the neighborhood sees it. They're scared, Jake. They believe you and Maria are forcing change that they didn't sign up for. Scoffing, Jake felt the fire inside him igniting. Change is hard for everyone, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't happen. Maria has done so much for this neighborhood. To ignore that is what? Tom challenged. Reckless? We can't just pretend everyone sees the world through your lens. There are threats out there, things you don't understand. Maria stepped forward, her voice calm yet firm. And what makes you think we don't understand? We live here, same as you. Jake and I want to show everyone that acceptance is not a threat but a bond. We're inviting people to listen, to share. That's what neighbors do. Tom's expression shifted, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. You think you can just host a meeting and everything will change? People will come, sure, but they'll come with their prejudices ready. They won't listen to things they've been taught to fear. Maybe they will if we show them our truth, Maria insisted. Sometimes people need someone to stand up for them. Maybe if they hear our stories. I can't believe you're so naive. Tom's voice dripped with incredulity. You're risking everything just to chase an ideal that might not even exist. The tension hung heavy in the air. Jake glanced at Maria, whose expression remained steady, even as his heart raced. They needed each other now more than ever. What if it goes wrong? He whispered to her, the doubt creeping back. What if we face a hostile crowd? She smiled softly, reaching for his hand. Then we face it together. That's the point, Jake. It's about showing them we're not alone. We have to try. Before he could respond, Tom interrupted. You have people supporting you, but all it takes is one loud voice to sway the tide. You need to think carefully before you go ahead with this. I'd hate to see this turn sour for you. The words lingered like a storm cloud above them. Just when Jake thought they might be making headway, it felt as if they were once again at the precipice of conflict. They all sensed the flicker of tension in the air. Then help us, Jake pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. Be there. Help us bring everyone together. We can show that openness is stronger than fear. Tom hesitated, the fight momentarily drained from his presence. For the first time, uncertainty crept into his demeanor. I don't know, Jake. I don't know if I can be that person. As he spoke, the sounds of their neighborhood began to fill the space around them. Shouts of laughter from children playing outside contrasted sharply with the gravity of their conversation. Jake realized that for every fearful adult, there were innocent hearts that beat with hope and hunger for connection. Meet us there, Tom, Maria urged. If you listen, perhaps you'll discover something beautiful in the very things you fear. Jake and Maria exchanged a look, one filled with conviction, ready to take the step forward together. They all stood at a crossroads, the tension palpable, a moment full of potential yet thick with risk. Who would they find standing with them, and who would choose to turn away? The door felt like it represented more than just their home, a gateway to change, to connection, to a future they hoped could bring healing. But as they waited for Tom's answer, a violent crash echoed from outside, a shatter of glass, followed by frantic shouting. What had just happened? Would it push them into the fight they were struggling to begin? Panic gripped Jake's chest as he exchanged a glance with Maria. Something was shifting beneath the surface, and the stakes just got a lot higher. The shattering glass shattered the tense atmosphere, and for a heartbeat, the world outside went silent. Jake held his breath, every muscle in his body tensed, ready for whatever chaos lay beyond the door. Maria's grip tightened around his hand, a silent promise that she wouldn't let go. Stay here, Jake whispered, instinctively moving toward the front window. He peered out cautiously, heart pounding in his chest. What he saw made his stomach drop. Several neighbors were gathered outside, their expressions twisted in shock and anger. A few stood fuming near a shattered car window. Someone had thrown something, an act of hostility that echoed Tom's warnings about fear. Someone has to speak to them, Maria breathed, her voice laced with both fear and determination. Are you sure? Jake glanced back at her, concern etched into his features. This could escalate. I have to. We both do. She took a deep breath, readying herself. It was the same kind of determination he'd seen before the fire that drove her to make a difference in their community. With a nod, Jake joined her, their hands still entwined. Stepping outside felt like stepping into an arena. Voices rose and fell like tides, some angry, others uncertain. But amidst the chaos, Jake could see familiar faces, people he had known for years. "Hey, everyone! What is going on?" he shouted, desperate to take control of the situation. "Let's calm down and talk." A few heads turned, surprise quickly morphing into scowls. Tom joined them at the edge of the group, and for a moment, it seemed that he might stand with them. Instead, he crossed his arms, his expression conflicted. "Back off, Jake!" a voice barked from the crowd. It was one of their neighbors, a man known for his sharp tongue and quick temper. "You think you can just waltz in here and change everything? Look at what's just happened. Yeah, you're pushing people too far." Another chimed in, nodding in agreement, panic simmering just below the surface. Jake felt a flash of anger, but it wasn't enough to push through the wall of fear surrounding them. "We're not trying to hurt anyone. We just want to talk, to understand." "Understand what? Your agenda? People don't want to sit around the table when all they see is change they didn't ask for." The hostility in the crowd pulsed like electricity, ready to ignite. Fighting against the tightening knot in his chest, Jake turned to Maria. She was already stepping ahead, her voice clear and unwavering, cutting through the rising tension. "This isn't just about us. It's about everyone. We can't ignore the fear, we can't just stand back and let it control us." But Tom's voice broke the moment. "Listen. Look around. This isn't the way to do things. They're frightened. Then let us show them they don't have to be." Maria shot back, her courage unyielding. The crowd shifted, uncertainty written all over their faces. And in that moment, Jake saw an opportunity. "If you're scared, let us find out why," he shouted. "Let us listen to each other, instead of shouting over each other. We're human. We all want the same thing, to feel safe in our homes." A murmur ran through the group. Jake felt the weight of their skepticism, but something sparked in him. Maybe, just maybe, if they could show them that their lives were interwoven, they could bridge the gap of fear. "Maria is right," he continued, his heartbeat matching the urgency in his voice. "We're here to build a community, not divide it. You have every right to be scared, but isn't it time we confronted that fear together?" Silence dragged on, stretching like a thin thread about to snap. Eyes darted around the crowd, and he could sense the wavering resolve, but just as Jake felt they might make a breakthrough, a piece of paper sailed through the air, striking him in the shoulder. He caught it, reading the words scrawled hastily across its surface. "You don't belong here." His heart plummeted. Could they really face this? Could love and understanding endure against such hostility? As he stared at the paper, uncertain of how to respond, the murmurs continued. Jake knew nothing. Would be simple, but they were in this together, weren't they? And as he exchanged a glance with Maria, the realization sank in: this was just the beginning. Would courage unite or tear them apart? The moment hung heavy in the air. As Jake stood stunned, paper crumpled in his fist. The crowd's whispers intensified, an electric mix of fear and distrust swirling around him. He could practically feel the eyes dissecting him, searching for a weakness, waiting for him to falter. Behind him, Maria steadied her breath, rallying her strength. "Talk to us," Maria urged, stepping forward, the pulse of her conviction echoing with every word. "We're all in this together. We can't let fear pull us apart." But the naysayers stood firm, their faces hardened by shared grievances, stained with the fear that had festered in the shadows for far too long. Jake couldn't help but feel the constraints of the division, pulsing between them, heartbeats of anger and sorrow that intertwined like steel chains. "Why should we trust you?" shouted that same sharp-voiced neighbor. "What have you done for us?" Jake's heart raced. It was a question that stung deeper than the glass that had shattered outside. It spoke of years of unaddressed issues, years of feeling abandoned by those who could lead. "We want to help," he answered, struggling to keep the tremor from his voice. "But we can't do it alone. We'll listen to you. We'll hear your fears. It's time to stand together. His words hung in the air, vibrating with a perilous hope. Yet, the crowd remained skeptical, weighing his intentions on a scale of hardship. A woman spoke up, tears glinting in her eyes. What if your help comes with a cost? We've been burnt before. Every ounce of Jake's resolve wavered under the weight of her sadness. Her voice struck a chord. People wanted safety and connection, not more confusion. Just as he pondered his next move, Tom took a step closer to Jake and Maria, uncertainty etched in his brow. Look, he said, maybe it's time for all of us to share. We've been so focused on what we want, we forgot about each other. Other heads turned toward Tom, some expressions softening, others still rocky. Jake dared to hope. Then let us start with the fear we can get through it. Maria encouraged, her tone rising with urgency. Talk to us about what worries you the most. This is a safe space. Slowly, the crowd began to thaw, the angry shouts replaced by subdued murmurs as they wrestled with her invitation. Jake could feel the tension lessening, like a rope slowly unraveling under the weight of their combined fears. A man stepped forward, looking older than Jake remembered, lines on his face telling tales of struggle. It's the noise. The loud engines at night, the sirens. It feels like we're living in a war zone. His voice trembled but held a fierce honesty, nods rippled through the crowd. Jake seized the moment. And what if we could work together to address those issues? Form a neighborhood watch, hold regular meetings. We can create a plan. Let us become a part of the solution. But just as hope flickered, a shadow darkened the crowd. Someone from the back was raising a hand, a wicked smirk playing on their lips. And what happens if you fail? We're tired of promises. Jacob's stomach twisted. Would this moment of possibility slip away? But deep down, he felt it shifting, the fear turning into a web of connection, as people began to step forward, voices weaving a tapestry of shared experiences and ideas. As they shared their worries and grief, he sensed that they were starting to breathe life into something new together. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of movement. A figure in the shadows lingered near the back, watching, waiting, and Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. Was it a friend or a foe? He leaned into Maria, determination pouring into his words. Whatever happens next, we'll stand together. And with that, the stage was set for the fight ahead. Would they heal as a community, or would darkness threaten to rip them apart once more? Jake tried to focus on the crowd before him, but that figure in the shadows tugged at his mind like a persistent itch. Eyes narrowed, he peered deeper into the dim light, trying to catch a glimpse of who was lurking. The murmurs around him began to rise again, the tension returning like a thunderstorm, heavy with anticipation. Maria's voice pulled him back. She stood firm by his side, her gaze steady and unwavering. Don't lose sight of them. They need us right now. Right, he thought, forcing the shadow from his mind. He straightened up and cleared his throat. Let us keep talking. You shared your fears, now, let us find solutions. A few faces softened, the embers of hope beginning to flicker in the darkness. A woman in the front spoke up, her voice trembling but fierce. It's just hard to believe anything can change. How do we do this? How can we fight against what feels like a never-ending struggle? The crowd listened, their eyes searching for an answer in Jake. He took a deep breath, planting his feet firmly on the ground. Change starts with us, right here, right now. We can create a community that stands together against the noise, against the fear. He looked around, locking eyes with as many people as he could. Let South gather at the park every Saturday and share what's bothering us. We'll take notes, set goals, real goals. The murmurs quieted down as a few people nodded. There was a cautious interest growing as each person contemplated the idea, hungry for something to latch onto, something that felt real. Maria jumped in, her energy infectious. We can also bring in local leaders, law enforcement. Let us have them hear our stories. Make them listen. Cheers erupted from a small corner of the crowd, breaking the divide that had loomed just moments before. They were warming to the possibilities. Hope was beginning to sprout against the backdrop of doubt, but before Jake could engage further, that same dark figure he had spotted earlier emerged from the shadows, stepping into the waning light. The crowd fell silent, eyes wide and breaths caught in throats. The smirk was gone, replaced with a frown that creased their brow. A sneer pulled their lips sideways, yet the intensity in their eyes spoke of something dangerous lurking beneath. "What do you really know about change?" The figure called out, their voice sharp as glass. "You think you can solve years of pain with some meetings and a few hopeful words? You're a joke, Jake." A cold wave of unease washed over the crowd. Jake felt his heart thudding against his chest. What if this person was right? What if the hate and doubt were legitimized in the eyes of the crowd? Silence wrapped tightly around him. "Enough." Maria's voice rang out like a bell. "You don't get to steal our hope. Change is never easy, but look around. We're all here because we care." The figure stepped closer, the atmosphere thickening with confrontation. "And what happens when they don't care? When you realize that some things will never change?" Jake felt it again, that knot of fear, and he wrestled with it. Could he draw strength from the people who were now eyeing him? He had to believe there was courage here, courage to face not just the outside challenges but their own fears too. "Listen," Jake finally said, meeting the shadowy figure with an unwavering gaze. "I don't claim to have all the answers. But I know that together, we can be the change we want to see. We have to start somewhere." A spark ignited, and people began murmuring again. Jake could feel the tension shifting, the weight of connection lifting like a fog dispersing at dawn. Hope, against all odds, was starting to shimmer anew in the remaining shadows, but would that spark be enough? Could the voices of unity drown out the whispers of division? Standing at the precipice, Jake wondered what the next step would bring. Would they have the courage to move forward, or would the shadows reclaim their fear? Jake stood there, trembling with uncertainty but also electrified by the energy of the crowd. The figure still loomed, but Jake felt the warmth of Maria's presence beside him, fueling his resolve. He knew they needed to press on, to transform this moment into something greater. Little by little, voices rose, uncertainty shifting towards determination. A young man in the back spoke up, "What if we all told our stories, our struggles? Maybe that could help us connect." Jake clutched onto the idea like a lifeline, connecting with the young man's earnest expression. "Exactly. Each of our stories matters. When we share, we strengthen our bonds. We can lift each other up when times get tough." The crowd began to buzz, invigorated by the shared thought. The shadows began to recede, if only slightly. Maria stepped in, a spark in her eyes. "We all have struggles, but we also have dreams. What would happen if we dared to dream together?" Cheers erupted again, louder this time. Jake felt a visceral pull of community gathering. He spotted a little girl near the front, holding a crumpled piece of paper. He knelt down, looking her in the eyes. "What are you holding there?" "It's my dream," she replied shyly, unfolding the paper with delicate fingers. "I want to plant flowers everywhere, so it looks beautiful." Jake smiled, warmth swelling in his chest. "That's a beautiful dream. A beautiful start. Imagine the more flowers we plant together, how much beauty we could create in this world." The heaviness began to lift further. People began to share their dreams. Every shared hope spun new threads into the fabric of community. There were wishes for safe neighborhoods, better schools, and a future without fear. Each voice was a brushstroke painting a brighter canvas against the dark backdrop, but the shadow figure wasn't done yet. "You really think words are enough? What about those who want to listen? What about the very people who aim to keep you down?" Jake could feel it again, that rustle of anxiety fluttering in his stomach. The figure had a way of unearthing hidden doubts. But as he looked back at the crowd, he saw faces full of determination. "Every voice matters," he said, tone firm and steady. "Every time we come together, we send ripples of change. We bring light into darkness." Jake caught Maria's eye, and the two shared a brief smile. In that moment, it was clear, this was more than just a meeting, it was the beginning of something extraordinary. The crowd gasped as an elderly man rose, standing tall despite having seen countless seasons of struggle. "I've burrowed through the dark. I've witnessed what happens when hope fades. What you're doing here gives me light again." The whispers transformed into a chorus of agreement, voices climbing over each other as share after share emerged, igniting the atmosphere further. They spoke of loss, of dreams dashed, and the desires to rebuild. Something powerful pulsed through the gathering. But as the energy swelled, a sudden commotion arose behind the shadowy figure. Voices were raised, and confused murmurs turned to shouts of alarm. Jake turned to see a group of people approaching, their faces stern and determined. "What's happening now?" His heart raced, the tension crackled. Was this support, or a threat? Jake swallowed hard, knowing that the real test of their newfound resolve was about to be laid bare. Would they stand firm against adversity, banding together in these precarious moments? The crowd fell silent once more. The importance of unity and courage loomed larger than ever. And in that charged space, with uncertainty crackling in the air like a storm about to break, Jake wondered what the confrontational path held in store for them all. Would they rise together, or would division seep back in? The group that had surged forward was a mix of familiar faces and strangers, but their intent was clear. Jake could sense the unrest simmering in the air, a tension that threatened to boil over. He glanced at Maria, her face a mask of apprehension, and he took a step closer to her, his heart thudding in sync with the nervous energy around them. "Who are they?" she whispered, eyes darting among the newcomers. Jake squinted, trying to discern whether they were allies or antagonists. Their expressions were resolute, each face telling a story of its own. One man in a loose jacket, salt and pepper hair framing his weathered face, stepped forward. "Listen up," he shouted, his voice cutting through the crowd like a knife. "We've had enough of your empty words. You can dream all you want, but what will you do when the dreamers are silenced?" Gasps echoed around Jake. He didn't want to show fear, but the man's challenge sent shivers down his spine. Did they think their dreams were futile? He glanced around, the crowd was shifting, uncertainty clouding their earlier resolve. Maria squeezed his hand tighter. The warmth of her grip grounded him, steeling his resolve. "If they're against us, we need to show them we won't back down," she said softly, determination lacing her voice. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "Everyone deserves to be heard," he called out, breaking the thick silence. "We're here to lift each other up. Sharing our struggles is only the first step. Together, we can turn words into action." The man scoffed, crossing his arms defiantly. "And what makes you think that will change anything? You think your voices can drown out the systems in place that keep us down?" His words hit like daggers. Doubt crept in, but Jake glanced at the crowd again. He saw the little girl who wanted to plant flowers, the elderly man with light in his eyes, faces filled with hope, struggle, and courage. It was a tapestry of resilience that could not easily be unraveled. "What if it means starting small?" Jake said, heart racing but voice steady. "What if every action, however small, sends ripples? If we plant seeds of hope today, tomorrow we can grow a garden." The tension shifted momentarily, with murmurs of agreement bubbling up, but the stern man pressed on. "A garden won't fend off the harshness of reality." "No," Jake replied, holding the man's gaze, feeling buoyed by the connection. "But a garden can bring people together. It's not only about what we face but how we stand against it. We can do this with love, support, and understanding." The elderly man stepped forward, affirming Jake's sentiment. "It's about legacy. What we build today will shape tomorrow for the generations to come. Our unity is our strength. The crowd began to respond, their volume rising again, growing in confidence. Each new voice was a single note in a growing symphony, harmonizing against the shadows. Yet, Jake knew the challenge wasn't over. The man remained unyielding, eyes cold and calculating, subtle hostility still lurking. Words can be beautiful, Jake, but don't forget actions speak louder, he sneered before stepping back, casting a shadow that loomed large. Jake's heart pounded as the crowd swelled around him, half afraid and half emboldened. They stood on the edge of something significant, ready to confront, ready to rise. But as excitement surged, Jake could sense that this was only the beginning. Would the meeting evolve into a transformative force, or would chaos reclaim the moment? He gazed toward the approaching storm, daring to hope and remember the dreams they had shared. The clock was ticking. Would they unite, or would fear divide them once more? The shadows churned in the gathering crowd, anxiety weaving through each individual as they stood on the brink of something immense, something that could either uplift them or tear them apart. Jake leaned forward, his heart racing, feeling the weight of their collective hope resting heavily on his shoulders. He looked out at the faces before him, the young, the old, the hopeful, and the skeptical. They all shared the same space and the same breath. "All right, everyone," he called out, his voice ringing out like a bell, clear against the tension. "We've faced fear, and we're still standing here. But this isn't just about what we're battling against, this is about what we're fighting for." Encouraged by the resonance of his own words, a warm energy surged through him. "We all want safety for our children, we want a vibrant community, a place where we can gather without fear. Together, we can foster change. It starts with understanding each other." The murmurs turned into murmurs of agreement, and as Jake spoke, he saw a flicker of determination sparking in some of the previously hesitant faces. The little girl with the crumpled paper lifted her tiny hand, a bright smile cut through the uncertainty. "I want flowers, Mr. Jake. Pretty ones everywhere." Jake's heart swelled. "Exactly. Just like those flowers, every one of us has something to contribute, no matter how small." A burst of energy enveloped him as people began sharing their dreams. "We could build more gardens, hold festivals, work with local businesses," called one neighbor. "We could have cleanup days, painting days, make the park our pride." "Yes," Maria shouted from beside him, her voice a vibrant thread weaving through the conversation. "Let us not only paint the park, let us paint our lives together. We can invite everyone here, talk to each other, share our experiences. It's all about community." Those who had been on the fringes, looking skeptical, began to step forward, voices rising in unison. The tension that once threatened to unravel everything transformed into a symphony of hope. "But what if it isn't enough?" The stern man challenged again, but the crowd's energy was too loud, too joyful for him to silence them now. Jake gripped the podium, determination flushing his cheeks. "It will be enough. Every seed we plant is a step toward change. And if we are about to fail, let us fail together. But the root of our community will grow stronger through the struggle." As cheers erupted, Jake felt a surge of warmth toward the diversity of voices filling the space. They were all fighting for the same thing: belonging, acceptance, a better tomorrow. Amidst the crowd, a tingle of realization dawned on him. Facing the shadows bravely together was what transformed fear into belonging. Then all at once, the shadowy figure shifted, a quiet intensity pulsing through their demeanor. "What's it going to take to convince you?" they finally asked, a softer uncertainty breaking through the anger. A warm silence enveloped everyone as the crowd stood, expectant. Slowly, Jake took a step forward. "It'll take trust. It'll take commitment, but most importantly, it'll take understanding. Understanding each other's struggles, yet leaving space to grow. Will you join us?" There was a stillness, hearts pounding in unison, as the tension hung thick for a heartbeat before the figure sighed. Maybe it's time I listened rather than wait for the world to change around me. Jake felt the crowd surging as they began to applaud, welcoming even the most resistant about healing together. This is only the beginning. Maria shouted, her spirit electrifying the air. Let us gather weekly, let us share stories, and forge bonds. Together we can ignite the spark that can light up our neighborhood. Cheers erupted, the voices intertwining beautifully, each one a note in a triumphant melody. Hope wove through them like vibrant fabric of possibilities. They clapped, laughed, united by a simple truth: change was possible when they stood together, each voice contributing to a greater harmony. As more ideas bounced through the air community. Festivals, shared work efforts, a collective defense against prejudice. Jake felt the warmth of possibility envelop them. They could face any challenge, united not by fear but by courage, by love. The storm didn't dissipate overnight. Jake knew they would still face hurdles, but in that moment, standing together, fear transformed into something brighter, a future woven from dreams, binding hearts in shared purpose. The specters of past judgments would always linger, but together they could navigate any storm. As Jake and Maria locked gazes, each filled with renewed purpose and strength, he realized something profound. They had risen, not as individual voices lost in the crowd, but as a unified force. They were family, community, transformers of their identity, and together, they would embrace every sunrise that awaited them. And as they began to disperse, arm in arm, ready to face the challenges ahead, a thought lingered in the air: this was just the beginning. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait not even one more second to share these hopes and dreams. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. And comment below your thoughts on this incredible transformation. The world needs to know. Share this video with at least 5 friends who also need inspiration. Together, we can grow brighter. Join the movement.